Good morning, everyone. Our project is enTERRA, Gardens Within a Garden. There are 5 questions on how to deploy architecture into Griffith Park. Is the grid of the city relevant to a place like Griffith Park? What happens when the grid meets the landscape? How does the grid translate physically? How does resolution change across scales? Can nature and architecture be incorporated into one another? The project focuses on the negotiation between nature and architecture. The topography of the park guides the design while the systematized grid intersects it. Conventional organization is changed on contact with an uneven terrain. The impasse between the grid and the nature is embraced through representation. Griffith Park is already established and offers information that influences enTERRA, from the larger infrastructures that are non-physical reaches to the small infrastructural elements such as light posts jointly from a larger lit area. Looking into the park's geology, Griffith Park's terrain is actively transforming, and is reflected directly to enTERRA. The water infrastructure allows us to visualize moments of water flow and water containment that happens within the park's boundaries. Similar to Kensatange's Tokyo Bay, we attempt to bring aggregates together into one open system that encourages continuous growth as a whole.
enTERRA participates in connection with the existing infrastructure of Griffith Park while following the natural terrain. The aggregation of small elements forms a whole through an additive design with the capacity to expand. The landscape emerges as a mode of organization within the project. While the project recognizes nature as its surroundings, new forms of nature become implemented into the gridded system, creating artificial versions of nature throughout. enTERRA incorporates public and private programs by aggregating units guided by the grid above and below the natural terrain. Artificial canyons that follow the natural terrain act as a space for the commons, with public program and space for gathering intersected by transportation routes for the shuttles moving to, from, and around enTERRA. While architecture continues to be a mediator for the natural and the built, it can also continue to mediate between the park itself and the city. The architecture can mediate the relationship between the built and the people. The program is dictated by gridded, contained gardens or terrariums. A system of platforms provides accessibility throughout the gardens, while creating spaces and various points of view for the commons. enTERRA follows an elevational hierarchy, with a loose correlation between platform levels and the degree of public use. While there is a way to access each platform, the progression and experience across the site is changing and unpredictable, and adjacencies have different levels of accessibility across the site.
The moments of privacy are provided for residents who participate in maintaining the site. Focusing on the essentials of living, these 20 by 20 feet structures themselves have a minimal footprint on the terrain. The housing is dispersed across the site with programmatic variations at different points of access. The canyon takes shape by recognizing the contour of the park, offering another method of mediating between nature and architecture. Artificial canyons in the landscape are used as a space for a variety of public programs that would best serve both the residents and passing visitors of Griffith Park, and by being exclusively about public use, the canyon becomes a method for circulating throughout the contours of the terrain. Forming around the aggregation of the contained natural elements, the areas of human access allow the existence of the terrariums within this larger garden of Griffith Park. The view of enTERRA from the city is deceptive. Due to its naturalistic appearance, the whole forms around the existing topography and adds on to the lightness through the materials and placement of the terraces and glass terrariums. Although the terrariums conform to the grid, the terrariums themselves become the mode of organization in which the terraces can form around. Depending on where one stands, the degrees of artificiality in nature can either be emphasized or blurred. And through the changes in perspective, enTERRA enables an experience that brings the notion of scales to light. And moving between the scales of this project, it essentially prompts the speculation of public spaces throughout enTERRA. Because nature is always shifting, and enTERRA aims to employ architecture that follows, it prompts us to ask 5 questions on how to continue architecture in Griffith Park. How can the natural landscape be experienced artificially? Can a footprint actually be small? Do all designed elements have a function? How are human beings working for this environment? Can nature and architecture be incorporated into one another? enTERRA is a project of gardens within a garden which attempts to explore the nuances of common grounds. We learn that architecture can be a mediator of organizing landscape and nature, and enTERRA, being this mediated space, then becomes the representational and the literal commons, bridging the private and the public, the built environment and the natural environment, the city and the park.